Brian Baldinger, NFL Network, Baldy Breakdowns. Always kind enough to join us to break down some of the key moments and elements in the action. And Baldy, we got a very intriguing matchup here between this Eagles and Falcons team, which, the Falcons are a team that has played really well coming down the stretch. They've played really good defensively. I think that's different from their team a year ago, but, they've won like seven out of the last 9 here. This is a team that's coming in pretty hot to Philadelphia.
Well, it's an experienced team, and they're well coached. And so they've been through this part of the season before. They got hot last year. At one point they were 8-5 last year. They finished 11-5 and went through the playoffs. And, we all remember what they did, in the Super Bowl. So it's an experienced team led by a former league MVP. And, they're pretty healthy right now. And so when you watch them, really take down the number one offense in football last week, you can see where this defense, which was 21st a year ago, finished the season number 8 this year. And when you watch them, their coverage is awesome. I mean, they are tight, sticky coverage. And it doesn't matter if it's Robert Alford or Des Trufant or Brian Poole or Keanu Neal. They look to lock you up, and they're really good at it. They were good at it against Brady in the Super Bowl. Brady was just so fantastic in that second half of the game that he beat sticky coverage throughout the second half.
Yeah, Baldy, we've heard a lot of people tell us that they like to play cover 3. It's very like Seattle. Quinn came from there.
Or the Chargers.
When you look at Nick Foles, do you like the fact, though, that he will know the coverage going into this game, that there's not going to be a lot of disguise, there's not going to be a lot of craziness, it's going to be this is what we do, and we do it really well, but that he will not have to really outthink the room?
Well, it's really not that simple. I mean, you could say cover 3. All cover 3 at certain depth becomes man coverage. So you got to have those kind of skills. You can't be good in zone. It's like basketball. You can't be good in zone, until you're really good at man. And so they could do both. But what they really discourage quarterbacks to do is to throw the ball in the middle of the field. They have a lot of speed there. They have some big hitters in Deion Jones and Keanu Neal and Ricardo Allen. And they just dare you to come into the middle of the field, just much like Seattle, with Cam Chancellor and Bobby Wagner and Earl Thomas. I mean, they're very similarly built. And so coming across the middle, throwing the ball in the middle of the field, they get their hands and they tip a lot of passes. So that's kind of what they discourage, not just Nick Foles and the Eagles, but that's kind of what they discourage you to do. They discouraged the Rams a week ago from doing that. And that's a team that made, a great living this year throwing the ball in the middle of the field and down the field.
Hey, Baldy, you talked about that you used the phrase sticky coverage. So does that concern you then against this Eagles wide receiver core? Do you think the Eagles are good enough to find some openings in the pass game?
Well, you always have to have your man beaters up. I think there's a lot of things that you can do to attack that particular coverage. When Peyton Manning went to Denver, he saw that type of coverage, and he had a lot of success against it. There's route combinations that can attack it. The quarterback's got to make the throws now. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And there's going to be some situations where you got to throw some 50-50 balls to let Alshon Jeffrey, and Nelson Aguilar go compete for the ball. Zach Ertz, let them go compete for it. They're not giving you very many easy completions. They challenge you. They challenge you like that. And so it's a good test. And, we'll see if Nick Foles, what his confidence level is like. Obviously, it wasn't good at the end of the season. But he's had a couple weeks to really study this defense, feel better about it, practice against it. So we're going to see the best that he has, whatever that is.
Is Nick hesitant to throw those 50-50 balls, though? Because Mike and I have talked about his relationship with Alshon Jeffrey and when that's worked and when it hasn't. And one thing Mike brought up and I thought was a good point is that Nick Foles likes to throw the ball, to wide-open receivers. But Alshon has to say, look, I'm going to get the ball anyway. Does Nick have to say to Alshon or Alshon have to say to Nick, just put it up there, man, I'm going to go get it?
Well, he's 0 for 15. 0 for his last 15 third-down attempts throwing the ball for a first down. That's not a great deal of confidence. And there's been open receivers. And I'm not talking about 3rd and 20s. I'm talking about 3rd and 5s. And he was hesitant to throw against the Raiders and the Cowboys in those situations. So, even when guys have been open, he's been hesitant for whatever reason. Whether he's got some obstructed view or he thinks the coverage is still too tight. Whatever it is. he's been hesitant to throw. He can't be. You're hesitant against the Falcons if you watch him, Saturday afternoon, just hitching and pump faking and all that. It's too late. This defense they're young and they're very fast, and they've drafted really well at the linebacker and the secondary positions, and even on the defensive front. I mean, they've got a lot of speed, and so you've got to be decisive. You have to be decisive in what you see. And to your point about receivers, look, if you're going to throw a 50-50 ball, throw it now. Let them go adjust to it. But if you hesitate and let that defense react, it's too late.
Forget about it. Brian Baldinger with us. Hey, so if we're talking the receiver game, before we leave that position, it seems maybe to me, Baldy, that Aguilar and Ertz, they could get open on some seam routes. Do you agree that Aguilar and Ertz are going to be key guys for the Eagles' offensive attack?
Yeah. I mean, I think all those guys are key. I mean, I think they're going to lean heavy on the run game and the screen game myself. And a lot of the misdirection game, a lot of drag, slide, bootlegs, run pass options. I mean, I think that's how they're going to come out. I think Smallwood will be active. I think, the screen game is going to be big. Try to get that speed going one direction, screen back the other way. I can see a lot of unbalanced formations, 3 tight ends. I can see a lot of that. But ultimately, you've got to convert your third downs wherever it is and however long it is. In order to sustain drives. I mean, the reason why the Eagles were the number one offense in football is because Carson Wentz was the number one quarterback by a wide margin on third downs in football. And it wasn't 3rd and 3s. I mean, he converted third in a lot of longs. Sometimes he scrambled, sometimes he threw it. Now, nobody expects Nick Foles to play like Carson Wentz. But there's going to be throws that you have to make against this defense. And whether they're seam routes like you talk about to Aguilar and Ertz, or whether they're crossers against man coverage, whatever it might be, when you get your opportunity, you got to make an accurate throw.
Wendell Smallwood active. If he's active, who sits? How do they adjust accordingly if they try to fit him in? And is that sort of maybe the surprise wrinkle that they're hoping doesn't get out, that they're going to lean on that screen game and Smallwood's their guy?
Well, Pete, they react. They release the inactives 90 minutes before kickoff, right? Just look at that inactive list and see if Smallwood's on it. I don't think he's going to be inactive. They've had games where all 5 backs were up this year. I think it's all hands on deck. I think they're going to lean heavy in the run game and the screen game. And Wendell Smallwood is their best player in the screen game. So I think he's going to be a part of this offense. I know he hasn't been, but that's just because Carson was just so good that you could get away with everything else that they had. I think you've got to play to their absolute strengths, and Smallwood is clearly, to me, and supported by Doug Peterson, that he's the best player in the screen game.
Brian Baldinger is with us. This Falcons defense is, as we talked about, much better than they were last year, but Jay Ajayi, 130 yards against them earlier this year with the Dolphins. Last week they gave up over 100 against Gurley. Last year the Eagles went for 200 yards on this defense. Is Doug Peterson able to look at what he did last year against Atlanta and take stuff from that? Is he going to look at that Miami game and see maybe what they did with Jay? Is that something that you think, when they look at the matchups, is that something they're going over?
Well, I did that Miami-Atlanta game back in, week 5 or 6, whatever it was. And the Dolphins were down 17-0 to the Falcons in that game. And the one thing I said about the Dolphins team, they never got away from Jay Ajayi, even when they were down 17 points. I mean, they didn't get away from putting the ball in his belly. And it turned out to really pay off dividends because he got really hot in the fourth quarter and he ripped off a lot of big runs. So I just see, unless this thing gets crazy away from the Eagles, I don't see them doing what Andy Reid did last week, and I don't see them getting away from the run game. I see them pounding it, trying to shorten the game. Now, the Falcons realized they had a weakness there. That's why they went out and signed Dontari Poe to really beefing up the middle of that defense line. He's been a good player for him. But, look, let's face it. I mean, the Eagles got 3 guys, one's an all-pro at center, and the right side is in the Pro Bowl. I mean, it's not like these guys don't match up with them. Like, I just think putting Lane Johnson next to Big V and an unbalanced formation and, putting Seumalo out there as an extra tight end, I think you're going to see all of that. And they're going to run at those undersized defensive end, whether it's Tack McKinley, whatever it is. I think they're going to attack the edges in the run game with these guys.
Yeah, Baldy, there's a big advantage. The Eagles' offensive line, very good. But when you flip it around the other side, do you like the Eagles? Because the defensive front could be, the trenches here, and I think that's being undervalued, is how good the Eagles' defensive front maybe matches up with this Atlanta offensive line.
Well, I don't know if they're being undervalued. I mean, I certainly not. I don't know how many people are. I mean, they're the number one defense in the league against the run. With the fewest rush yards in the league. So, that's over, 16 weeks now. That's not like a phony statistic. That's through, after every game, they give up the fewest rushing yards. That's significant. Now, you could say, okay, the Eagles had these blowout wins and just throwing it. All right. I think they take a lot of pride in being able to rush the passer and play the run on the way to the quarterback. And the fact is that Jim Schwartz purposely all year long rotated his defensive linemen, 8 in every game. And his whole goal was to manage them to get them through the end of the season, but ultimately to be at their very best in peak shape come January. And so Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett will not have played in 3 weeks. Fletcher Cox and Tim Jernigan played a quarter in the last 3 weeks. I mean, they're as fresh as they're going to be. And I've talked to Fletcher Cox about it. He's not always happy when he comes off the field, but you'll see those guys probably play 80% of the snaps on Sunday. And if you look at Ben Garland for the Falcons, now he's a great story. He's an Air Force Academy kid, but he's going to start his 4th NFL game ever. And he hasn't seen Tim Jernigan and Fletcher Cox yet. So he saw Aaron Donald last week, and it wasn't pretty. So, you gotta, and Matt Ryan he's Irish Catholic, Philadelphia tough. All right, Delco tough. I mean, he takes his share of shots, but any quarterback that gets hit by Fletcher Cox and Tim Jernigan gets affected by those hits.
Yeah, Fletcher Cox, a big part of this, push up the middle, because Matt Ryan struggled the last time in Philly. They really got to him, sacked him a couple times, but he was just off that day. Julio Jones, Baldy, got his. What do you do if you're Jim Schwartz with your secondary against Julio? Because they don't have that big physical corner. They, they're young back there. You get the veteran guy like Jones with a veteran quarterback. So what does Jim Schwartz do?
Yeah, but there's not a corner in the league. Marshawn Lattimore, perhaps. Yeah. I mean, there's 2 or 3 corners in the league that, have no fear of going up and getting right in the chest of Julio Jones. But that's okay. I mean, you're going to rely on a fierce pass rush. You'll have safety help. You'll have a defense that's going to be fresh and running. I mean, one guy doesn't shut Julio Jones down. The defense does. And what you really have to worry about is they're going to throw the ball to him. He's going to get his catches. You just got to limit the yards after the catch, because he could get into that 4.4 speed in about the second step. So you really got to chase every ball. You got to get 11 guys to it. The effort has got to be supreme, because it's really the effort that controls Julio Jones.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Baldy, because I was saying yesterday, one guy that I think is kind of under the radar in this game is Bradham, and the way that he tackles, because Freeman and Coleman, those guys catch the ball out of the backfield, and if you don't tackle, but Bradham had tackled so well this year, and then the games that he didn't tackle, the Seattle game and the Ram game, you saw the defense have some problems. But one of the reasons why I think this defense has been so solid is because they don't give you a lot of yards after the catch. They let you catch the ball, but then they bring you right down.
They've been a good tackling defense, there's no question, including Jalen Mills. He's been an excellent tackler. That's why they rested him, against the Cowboys in Week 17. They wanted to freshen him up. Those hits against, tight ends and running backs, they take its toll on a kid this size. But Rasul Douglas, I mean, they've been, and everybody back there, I mean, they've really been, overall, they've tackled really well this year. And so I expect them to play really fast and tackle hard. And look, at the end of the day, when you look at the stat sheet at the very end of this game at around, 7:30 on Saturday night, you got to have 2 takeaways from the Falcons. However you get it, whether you're tipping balls from Matt Ryan or knocking the ball out of receiver's hands, you got to get 2 takeaways. You got to take 2 possessions away from this Falcon offense.
Hey, Baldy, would you play Sidney Jones? And if so, who sits in the secondary?
Well, I would play him. Yeah, I mean, he got a chance. I don't think they played him against the Cowboys just to see if he looked good in the uniform. I mean, I think they played him because they were getting him ready for January. And this was an elite athlete with elite moving skills, and he's been practicing. There was no setbacks in that game against the Cowboys. I think they really wanted, talking to Joe Douglas, they were really hoping that, he would get tested down the field to see if, just watch him turn and run, play the ball in the air, but that didn't really happen in that game. But I don't think I don't know who's going to sit at this point, but, maybe it's Rasul Douglas. I think Sidney Jones is going to be up come Saturday.
That'll be interesting, to see how much use they give him, too. I mean, there's a guy who's missed the entire season to put him in such a big situation. That'll be interesting. And, Baldy, you look at the Atlanta running attack. We talked about the Eagles have the best rush defense in the league. But do you think Atlanta is better suited to throw the ball? And we know it's supposed to be pretty damn cold now. All of a sudden, the weather is taking a little change.
The temperature forecast seems to be changing.
But does Atlanta want to throw the ball in this game, or do they want to stick to what they've been doing again, which is run the ball, knowing that the Eagles have the best rush defense?
Well, Steve Sarkisian has come in and taken over for Kyle Shanahan, and he learned Kyle's offense. And the foundation to everything Kyle does is off the run game. They do a lot of different things, in the run game, and they use both those backs. I mean, Devontae Freeman is as quick as any back in this league. And there's times when you swear he's just the second coming of Barry Sanders. Is that sort of power and quickness. And Tevin Coleman can flat out fly, and he's really good in the passing game. So they're not getting away from the run in this game. I mean, it's the foundation of what they do, the play action, misdirection. They try very hard to establish it, and they're pretty good at establishing it.
Baldy, I saw you tweeted out that Foles is 0 for 16 and third down percentage there, 0 for 16. Is there any scenario where you would consider a quarterback change in this game or a mid-game or at any point if Foles comes out, or is Foles their guy, win or lose?
Well, I mean, I watched Nick Saban do it, on Monday night, and
to success.
Played. Yeah, I mean, so the precedent to me was set on Monday night. I mean, if Nick Foles is just horrible, I mean, just reckless and horrible at halftime of the game, I think that they have some faith in Nate Sudfeld. I mean, John DeFilippo has worked him out 3 times every single week all season long. He played pretty well against the Cowboys. It was a preseason game for the most part, but he took care of the football. He caught the ball. He delivered it. I wouldn't rule it out. Now, I don't think that will happen, but I didn't think Jalen Hurts with a 25-2 record as a starter in Alabama would get pulled either.
Yeah. Paul, do you ever play on a team where the guys knew, the coaches knew that the second guy was better?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I played in Dallas when Gary Hogan was better than Danny White, and the players knew, and, that those kind of things can happen. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I don't really believe that's the case. But
right, I'm not suggesting that that's the case, but just that.
I know you're not. But I think the fans know. They know what they're looking at. They booed him on Christmas night, against the Raiders when he was just awful. I mean, the fans, look, it's a playoff game. It's going to be a playoff atmosphere. The fans need to be entertained. If they see bad football, I mean, they're not going to stay quiet about it. So the fans, I mean, I don't think that, Doug Peters is going to listen to the fans, but we're all going to see if it's more the same of what we saw in the last 2 weeks.
Baldy, quick bullets on the other games. You got Tennessee against New England, the Saturday night game. Can you come up with a scenario for Tennessee to win that game?
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing about Marcus Mariota is he's not a great passer, but he's a great playmaker. And he's an unbelievable, competitive, athletic kid. And he never fatigues. He never quits. He's just a complete warrior. You can't break his spirit ever. It's just not the Polynesian inside him. That's who he is. Right. He is an unbelievable warrior. And Derrick Henry is too. And there's a great deal of respect in the New England side for those two players. And they fueled a comeback last week. And so the offensive line is good. They're real good. And there's some days when they're very good. And so you've got that defense coordinator in Tennessee, that his whole purpose in life is to hit the quarterback. It doesn't matter where he's at, as a player, as a coach, as a head coach, as an assistant coach, each designing ways to get to Tom Brady. So can I design a way? Yeah, and I don't think it's going to happen. But I won't be surprised to see Tennessee play well.
Jacksonville beat Pittsburgh 30-9. Very good young defense. Do you think this is a similar type of game or a lot different than the first meeting?
Well, I think it'll be a lot different. I mean, I don't think, Ben Roethlisberger's going to throw 2 pick-sixes and 5 interceptions. Like, I don't see that happening. But I don't know how healthy Antonio Brown is. And even when he was out there in Week 5, that A.J. Bouye and Jalen Ramsey, that's a talented tandem of corners. Talented. And they love to challenge receivers. So is Antonio, if he's really healthy, going to get his? Yeah, he's still going to get some. They threw it to him 20 times. I mean, he got 10 of them. But it's a good defense. And they got a lot better when they picked up Marcel Darius halfway through the season. So, well, I think Jacksonville's offense is just, far too elementary to really knock Pittsburgh off here. I think it'll be a close game. I think Jacksonville's defense is going to play well.
Yeah, and then the last one, of course, Saints and Vikings. You've got the maybe the best defense in the league in Minnesota against a very balanced Saints team. This one should be a lot of fun, Baldy. When you're watching the film of these two teams, how do you kind of surmise this one?
I mean, even when I get when I'm breaking this game down, I get my popcorn ready. It's just that good. I mean, it's just that good. I mean, I just think this is going to be a phenomenal playoff game. I mean, you got Drew Brees and Sean Payton who have done it and know how to do it. And the offense is really good. They didn't run the ball at all last week. They put up 31 points. I mean, they can score and they can move the ball. And Minnesota's defense is airtight. There's not a flaw that they have, except that New Orleans is just really good at getting you to pattern read what they're doing. And once they get that pattern going, they break the pattern and they counter you and they misdirect you. They find ways to do it. And anybody that would shortchange Case Keenum just hasn't studied. They just don't know. This kid played for Art Briles at Stephenville High School, played for him at the University of Houston. This kid is fearless. He's played really well. He's got a good team around him, and he knows that he doesn't need to screw this up. The defense is going to keep him in the game, and so he does it, and he has it. So it's going to be a great contest. You can spend an hour right here on the phone, guys, just looking at all the different sides. Marshawn Lattimore, I expect him to line up. If Adam Thielen goes to get a cup of Gatorade, I expect Marshawn Lattimore to go get a cup of Gatorade with him. I think he's going to go everywhere he goes.
Should be fun. That game is the Sunday night game. New Orleans at Minnesota. Brian Baldinger, Baldy NFL, Baldy Breakdowns. Use that hashtag, and you can find his stuff on there. Did you play for Gruden, Baldy?
No, I didn't. I left here.
You missed him in Philly?
I tried out. I was there in '95, but I just couldn't get healthy to play, so I never got a chance to play for John.
All right. We've had a lot of people who had a chance to play for him kind of give us their insight on that. I mean, 10 years, $100 million, man. You would think that the man is going to reinvent the game coming back for that price, but we'll see how that all works out.
He took 2 moribund franchises in Oakland and Tampa, and he took them to the Super Bowl, and he got one of them. So he accomplished a lot when he was out there.
Oh, yeah. Well, Baldy, always appreciate it. We hope that we have the opportunity to talk about an Eagles NFC championship
next week as well. Yep.
All right, pal. Take care.
Thanks, Baldy.
Okay, my pleasure. See you guys.